about a 2-minute warning, just heads up. And stream is going to be starting now. I'll give you an all clear in just 1 second. All right, you're good to go.
Thank you. All right, 6:30, so I'll call this Tiger City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. City Recorder Krieger, would you please conduct a roll call?
Youth Councillor Vogel.
Here.
Councillor Shaw.
Here.
Councillor Singh.
Here.
Councillor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
And I believe Councillor Lube is not, is excused from the meeting, traveling.
Yeah, Mayor Lube is traveling, so thank you. All right. So everyone please mute your mics and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is non-agenda items. I know that city team may have a couple of items for the non-agenda. And before I ask the city teammate councilors, do you have any non-agenda items? I see none. I could not see you, Councilor Wolf, so would you please confirm verbally?
I apologize, Council President Hu. I have terrible reception, so I'm looking to try to rejoin. I'm sorry, it's breaking up pretty badly. So please, what was your question again?
Do you have any non-agenda item? I think she said no. So okay. So yeah. So Assistant City Manager Trish, please go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I have 2 non-agenda items to introduce to you this evening. The first item will be an emergency declaration, a resolution of the City of Tiger declaring an emergency related to winter storm damage and response. We're recommending that Council ratify the declaration of emergency related to winter storm damage and response because of the extreme weather and its associated impacts these past several days. These impacts include power outages, infrastructure damage, and multiple days of 24-hour operations. Through the upcoming thaw, we anticipate further impacts that may include additional downed trees, water pipe failures, and transportation impacts. Pursuant to City Code, Council President, acting on behalf of Mayor Lube, has declared a state of emergency based on the winter storm. We're asking Council to ratify that decision.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Trish. Councilor, do you have any questions or comments or a motion?
Council President, who I'm happy to make a motion. I move to approve resolution of the City of Tiger declaring an emergency related to winter storm damage and response, and be resolution number 24 dash, perhaps I'm looking at Carol Krager for the number, and if not, perhaps we could fill that in at the end.
Yes, and this is on your guide. It's a resolution number 24-02.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to amend that. I move to approve resolution number 24-02.
I second the motion.
Okay, the motion has been moved and second. Are there any further discussion?
No,
Seeing none,
I'm sorry,
Please go
Council
ahead.
President. Just say I do think this is vital and really appreciate Assistant City Manager Trish and staff for bringing this forward. I think it's going to be very helpful for our community during this horrible weather situation we're in. So just thank you very much.
Yes, I also want to thanks and acknowledge those first responders and essential service provider, including many of our city teammates at Public Works and the police department for working around the clock in this extremely dangerous condition, and Tiger Serve volunteers for keeping our daytime warming shelters open. And I know that PGE crews have been working hard to restore power outage in our region, but many people are still without electricity for quite a long time, this freezing weather. So if you're watching and you know anyone who still doesn't have power back, please check in on them to make sure they're okay. And Washington County has 3 24-hour emergency warming shelter open. And if you or someone you know who require transportation assistance to those warming shelters, please call 211. And finally, if you don't have to travel tonight, please stay in for everyone's safety. All right, so will City Recorder read the number and title of the resolution, please?
Resolution number 24-02. A resolution of the City of Tiger declaring an emergency related to winter storm damage and response.
Will City Recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, I'd like to get an advisory vote from Youth Councilor Vogel. Oh, I couldn't hear you.
Youth Council, your mic is muted.
Well, oh, there you go.
There we go. Oh.
Are you guys waiting on me? Sorry.
Okay, could I hear your vote?
Yes. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Councilor Singh.
Yes.
Councilor Wolf.
So my apologies. We actually have a storm where I am as well. So I just logged on City Recorder. So I am unclear of what I'm voting on. So if you could restate that.
All right, this is for resolution number 24-02, a resolution of the City of Tiger declaring an emergency related to winter storm damage and response.
Yes.
And Council President who?
Yes. So the motion to approve the motion to approve resolution 24-02 has been adopted by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Thank you. The next item, going back to Assistant City Manager Trish regarding Measure 110.
Thank you, Council President. Following on the discussion of last week's council meeting about the legislative agendas, we are bringing forward to you a vote on whether Measure 110 needs reform. Oregon Measure 110, known as the Drug Addiction Treatment and Recovery Act, was passed in November of 2020 and is expected to be revisited in the short session that begins next month. Following on the feedback as we continue to edit and refine the state legislative agenda pursuant to your comments last week, Tiger teammates would like to record council's position on this measure in that document. For this evening, we're asking you to vote on whether you believe Measure 110 needs reform and ask you to vote either yes or no. You can also abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Trish. Councilors, any comments or questions before we vote? Councilor Wolf, please go ahead.
Thank you, Council President Hu. I just would like to comment. I appreciate this opportunity to acknowledge whether we believe there's opportunities to find clarity in the measure or to strengthen some opportunities for our community that's in crisis or our police officers. So I just appreciate the opportunity for us to at least give our direction towards this. So thank you, Assistant City Manager.
Youth Councilor Vogel, you want to express your opinion on this?
Yeah, I hope this is coming through okay and I'm not sounding too patchy, but yeah, I agree. Just echoing what Councilor Wolf said and looking for those spaces for clarity and just kind of so we can provide how we feel in hopes that kind of provides, you know, as it goes along, more clarity. And I look forward to hearing more about that, but I also really appreciate this opportunity.
Councilor Shaw?
Thank you, Council President Hu, and also Assistant Manager Trish. I too appreciate the opportunity, and I would like to have more clarity. I do think reform is needed, so my vote would be yes.
Thank you. Councilor Singh?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I will be voting no.
Thank you. And as for me, I do believe that we should not criminalize people for addiction issues. However, I do believe that the current system does not provide enough accountability or incentive for people to continue or even begin to seek treatment. So I'll be voting yes. So I'm not familiar with how we should vote on this. Do we ask City Recorder for a roll call? Okay. Or City Recorder Krieger, would you please conduct a roll call for yes or no or abstain?
Yes. Youth Councilor Vogel for an advisory vote.
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Councilor Singh.
No.
Councilor Wolf.
Yes.
Council President Hu.
Yes. So the vote was 3 yes and 1 no. And Assistant City Manager Trish, do you have enough on us at this point?
Yes, we do, and we'll be bringing back the revised state legislative agenda for your review prior to the start of short session, which begins February 5th. Thanks for taking the time this evening.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to the public comment section. So there's no in-person public comment today. So if you want to call in to provide public comment, the calling number is 503-966-4101. Again, it's 503-966-4101. Before we take public comment, let's invite Assistant City Manager Nyland to follow up previous public comments. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. At last week's council meeting, we did receive 3 written public comments. 2 were about fireworks, and 1 person expressed frustration with the new traffic pattern on Bull Mountain Road. My hair is blowing just because of the space heater that's going on, because I am freezing. Just FYI, not trying to be glamorous. Now, regarding the fireworks, we did provide information about the outreach done to date, including the survey, which had over 2,000 responses. We also let community members know that we will be discussing fireworks at your February 6th council meeting. Regarding Bull Mountain, a team member did reach out providing information and updates about the construction and safety improvements. So all 3 public commenters have received responses from the city. That is my report from this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. City Recorder Krieger, my understanding that we did not receive any written public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. So next, there's no in person, so we will go to the phone or phone in or video public comment. Mr. Thornburg, do we have anybody either in the phone queue or the video queue to provide public comment?
No one in the phone queue or video queue at this time.
Thank you. And if anybody ever call in, please let us know. Thank you. All right, next up is Interim Police Chief McDonald for his update. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Council President Hu, and good evening, Council. I would like to report on the December 2023 dashboard. And Eric, Mr. Thornburg, could you share that one slide that we have? The information that I wanted to share with Council tonight, maybe I should sing a song while we wait for the slide. Well, I'll save you from that, but we will. What I wanted to talk about is we've noticed something, and Chief McAlpine had been reporting over the course of the year that we've been noticing a reduction in certain categories that we report on. And specifically, I was going to talk this evening about person crime and property crimes. And across the country, reasonably consistently, we've noticed a reduction. And here in Tigard, we've seen that too. And so these aren't the final, what we would consider audited, statistics. These are a preliminary statistic for the year. So what you're seeing there on the in the far right column is the percentage reduction year over year between 2022 and 2023. So pretty consistently, we've seen a nice reduction in those rates. But more importantly, I wanted to share a little story with all of you this evening. And it comes to talk about the sharing of information that we do and the networking that we do across the country. And I guess before I go there, I should ask Council if you have any questions about the slide that's up there, and then I could ask Mr. Thornburg to take it down. Yes, Councilor Shaw, or yes.
Thank you so much. Just if I'm reading the chart correctly, is the numbers starting at 40 moving down? Is that for 2022? And are the numbers then for, let's say, 42 for 2023, or is it reversed? I just want to make sure I'm reading the years correctly.
Nope, that's correct. So the left-hand columns, I'm sorry, the top of that was cut off. So at person crime, where it says 40 and 42, 40 is December of 2022, 42 is December of 2023. Moving over to the next column, the 586 and 494 is the year-to-date 2022, and then the year-to-date 2023. So for person crime, we're seeing a significant reduction, which is something that we've seen across the country. So yes, so you're reading that correctly. And then in your packet, there should be the full 4 pages of data for all of you as well. Okay. Not seeing any other questions at the moment, but if you do, feel free to please interrupt. But I wanted to share a little story. So this was forwarded to me by our crime analyst back in mid-December. And it highlights the networking that we do as an organization and why it's so important. So our crime analyst participates with a variety of state, local, and federal partners where they share information about activity that they're seeing in their area. And so she has these all across the country, and we've been seeing some criminal activity that involved a variety of different people who come traveling across the country, and they get recognized by detectives maybe from another part of the country. So back on December 20th, we had a detective from Fairfax, Virginia, who happens to be the vice president of the Mid-Atlantic Organized Retail Crime Alliance. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but what they do is they work with agencies in their area, so in Virginia, that follows these groups that go nationwide with these criminal acts. What he found, because he had a relationship with our crime analyst via these networks, that there was they had a nationwide warrant for some people, and their phone was pinging in Tigard. Because of the networking that our crime analyst does, he was able to reach out to her. And then by the time that she got there in the morning, it had moved and it was in Northeast Portland. Then later in the day, when we were able to get detectives organized, they were actually in Bethany, so back in Washington County. And detectives were able to get together, Washington County, Beaverton, and our commercial crimes unit, and actually go and locate, let's see, three individuals who actually had just broken into some cars in the parking lot of the Sunset Athletic Club. And they were actually able to apprehend these individuals. And there are a bunch of local charges here that they were able to attach to them. And then they're working with detectives from all across the country now that they've been able to identify through this networking that we do as an organization to be able to connect these people to a variety of different crimes. And these are property crimes that these people are committing. They break into vehicles often in the parking lots of athletic clubs, shopping malls, things like that. And they're stealing valuable items, and they're victimizing members of our community right here. So there's a high likelihood, and we haven't been able to identify it specifically, but there's a high likelihood that they had committed some crimes in Tigard. And because they were identified as having been in Tigard. So I just wanted to share an example of the networking that we do across the country, and somebody having someone they could reach out to here in this area and say, hey, Tigard, we've got someone we're looking for in your area, and this is somebody from all the way back in Virginia. So that's a good story I wanted to share with all of you about some of the great work that our folks do and the networking, and why it's so important that we communicate even nationally, all the way across the country, to build these networks. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Not a question, Interim Police Chief McDonald, but just kudos to you and your team. Utilizing technology, utilizing that networking. We do have a lot of shopping opportunities in the city of Tigard, a number of malls. So really appreciative of the work of both your officers and all those individuals who share that information. So just thank you as both a concerned citizen, community member, but also a counselor. I'm just so happy your team is really on top of this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Counselor Singh. You're muted.
Sorry. Thanks for the update, Chief. I was curious about you mentioned the person crime and property crime reduction trending downward nationwide, and just wondering if there's any research out that sort of gives a rationale for that, or just that's my first question. And then the second question I had was on the data in terms of arrests felonies, misdemeanors, and warrants, if there's demographic data on that, and if that's accessible publicly.
Yes, there is. I'll answer that your second question first. Yes, we do have the demographic data, and I'd have to see how current our data is on our transparency page, but it is something that we do post routinely. It is something that we do keep track of, and we also have the stop data that we use, and I analyze that each month, and it's something that we report to the state monthly as well. And then going to your first question, remind me what your specific question was for the first question.
You mentioned
the reduction.
Crime. Yeah, the reduction. If there's any explanation or like research on that, that's sort of explaining why that's happening.
Yeah, I think it's too early to have like a definitive answer to it. But one of the things that we did see is that during the pandemic, we saw a significant spike in both person crimes and property crimes, all across the country, Tigard included. Some of the most egregious person crimes, we, fortunately didn't see as drastic of an increase. So I think it's fair to say that part of it is that we're maybe returning to a pre-pandemic level. And, I'd want to have the opportunity to go through and analyze that myself and compare Tigard specifically. I think it's important to use our community when we're making those comparisons. So we could go back and go to that 5-year reflected data and look at some information prior to the pandemic. And I think that would give us a much better view as to kind of where we're at. And I'd be happy to do that and bring that information back next month if you'd like, because I think it's valuable for us to evaluate as a community, and it is something that we keep track of, so it won't be that difficult to look for.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Seeing none, so thank you, Chief, so much for your report and for working your team for working around the clock in this weather condition. So thank you so much. Please stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, so next item on the agenda is Council Liaison Report. Councilors, who would like to go first? Okay, Councilor Shaw, please go ahead. Thank you.
I think Councilor Wolf went first last time, so I thought I'd volunteer this time. Being just the start of 2024, we welcomed many new members to both the boards and committees that I sit on. So both the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, we welcomed new members, really provided them with information on code of conduct, where current projects are, and we reviewed current projects. So I won't go through those tonight because it'd be a review which you all have up-to-date information on. But we reviewed all the different projects and also code of conducts. And then with regards to the Tigard Transportation Advisory Committee, we also, again, welcome new committee members. We reviewed current projects and brought those individuals up to speed. So next month, I should have a more detailed report because we'll get back to doing, I'd say, the business of 2024 and what the plans are. And then our chart committee meets tomorrow. So I cannot report on that yet, but I look forward to our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shaw. Councilor Singh, would you like to go next?
Sure, thanks. So since the last council liaison update on December 19th, there's been a library board meeting that took place last Wednesday on January 10th. I unfortunately was not able to attend, but I was looking at the agenda. It looks like new board members were also introduced at that meeting, and I will update council at the next council liaison update on the content of that meeting. Other than that, I plan to attend the Willamette Intake Facility Commission Board meeting next Monday, and I'm looking forward to the Budget Committee meeting next week to discuss the recommendation from the Community Navigator Ad Hoc Committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Wolf?
Thank you, Council President Hu. Since December, I don't believe I reported on this towards the end of the month. The Metro Area Communications Commission, we meet only quarterly. and that was to approve the Fall 23 awards. One of the larger grants is $150,000 that Tigard's part of, which is a strategic plan development on capital asset investments. Also got an update on Mac's advocacy for the FCC, and then also where they, as of December, were in negotiation process with our providers in terms of Ziply and Comcast. The community engagement, can you guys hear me? I just went blank.
Yes. We can hear you. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Okay, we will go back to Councillor Wolf. Hopefully she'll get back to us. Youth Councillor Vogel, would you like to provide your update?
Yeah, I can. Hopefully you guys can see me. I can't see myself, but good, glad to hear. Okay, so TIAC had a great meeting. We had a meeting on Monday, the 8th. We had our new officers there ready to go. We had our new vice president taking notes. We welcomed Kenny Asher, and we did hold a discussion around youth climate action and kind of how TIAC wants to participate in that with the upcoming events. It was a great discussion, super, super helpful, and just proactive. It was great to get people's opinions. We also worked on our upcoming schedule, which includes our youth voting forum on March 3rd from 1 to 3 p.m. We are involving council, so I'm really excited to see the mayor there, as well as some local representatives and TIAC, of course. We are planning to attend the egg hunt on March 30th, as well as planning to host a meal with the Good Neighbor Center. So along with that, that's kind of what's in the works, and we're excited for our next meeting, which is where we'll go more in depth about those next events.
Thank you. And as for me, I attended the Town Center Advisory Commission meeting on the 10th, and like all the board and commission, there's introduction of new members and election of new officers. They have a strategic plan review and a retreat. And there's a report, preliminary proposal for fiscal year 24-25 of TCDA budget for the city center. It's $960,000 for 5 projects. And for the Tiger Triangle, it's $7.45 million also for 5 projects. That's all I have. So let's see. Mr. Stromberger, is Councilor Wolf back yet?
Council President Hu, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Good. Would you like to finish your liaison report?
Oh my goodness, I so apologize. I'm
no problem.
in the middle of a storm, and so I'm going to switch to audio because I lost my connection. I think the Community Engagement Committee, we had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night that actually got rescheduled for February given the current weather in Tigard. And then the Program Advisory or Policy Advisory Board for the Community Development Block Grants for Washington County, we are also awarding kind of that last round of ARP dollars to non-congregate programs, and then also started just the annual process of those HUD programs. So that's my report. Thank you, Council President Hu.
Thank you, Councilor Wolf. All right, that's all for the Council Liaison report. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. So tonight, the only item on the consent agenda is Pavement Management Program Engineering and Inspection Services. Is there a motion?
Council President Hu, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I can second.
Okay, the motion's being moved and second. Is there any discussion? So City Recorder Krieger, would you please conduct a roll call?
Yes, Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Singh, okay, I'll try again. Councillor Wolf,
Yes.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
and do we have Councillor Singh back yet? Okay,
All right, the motion to approve the consent agenda is adopted by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Oh, I see Councillor Singh.
Yeah, sorry, I got kicked off. I think I'm on my phone right now. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, great.
Uh,
Sorry.
Yeah, so if you could give your consent agenda vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so with Councillor Singh joining us back, the motion to approve the consent agenda is adopted again by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Thank you. So next item on the agenda is Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, Tiger Library Microgrid Project. And project planner Peggensteiger will introduce this item. Good evening.
Good evening, City Councilors. Gary Paggenstacker, project planner with the City of Tiger Community Development Department. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tonight, we're following up on the July 11th, 2023 council briefing on this matter, on the Tigard Energy Resilience Initiative, at which staff provided background, why we were doing this, who's involved, and defined microgrids, resiliency, and sustainability for the three-tier structure of the initiative. Councilors expressed general support for the project and specifically expressed interest in related engagement activities. Council materials for this evening include PAE Consulting Engineers, Tier 1 Library, Photovoltaic and Battery Microgrid Feasibility Study, the PAE PowerPoint presentation this evening, A&R Solar's cost estimate report, and a council resolution in support of the project for potential project funding. This presentation will focus first, share the findings and conclusions of the PAE study, then provide implementation perspectives from project stakeholders, followed by council questions and discussion, and conclude with council consideration of the proposed resolution in support of implementation. Karina Hirschberg, project manager with PAE Consulting Engineers, will begin with a PowerPoint summary of the feasibility study. As Eric, if you will cue that up for beginning that in a minute, please. Project stakeholders with me for this agenda item include project partners Jenny Hall with Energy Trust of Oregon, KJ Lewis with PGE Local Government Affairs, and city staff Kevin Cole, Tigard Facilities Manager, Mike Lewick, Public Works Emergency Services Coordinator, Eric Thornburg, IT Network Administration, Halstead Bernard, Library Director, and Kenny Asher, CD Director. So, excuse me. So we'll start out with Karina's PowerPoint for about 10 minutes, and then transition to sort of a panel format for the stakeholder considerations for project implementation. So Karina, why don't you start out and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Karina Hirschberg. I'm an electrical engineer with PAE Engineers, and I was the project manager on this. I present on energy resilience a lot, and I'll admit this is the most dramatic setting that I've ever presented on the topic. I am sitting in a house that has not had power for going on 4 days now. So I'm running off a laptop battery and a hotspot. So hopefully everything gets me through here. But I'm going to share a little bit about what kind of my current situation is, because it actually provides, I feel like, some really good context for what we're going to be talking about today. So I live a little bit north of Beaverton area, so it's kind of a 1950s neighborhood. And what we're doing fine, the family's doing fine, and we've been able to shelter in place. And the reason we've been able to shelter in place is we actually live next door to my parents, who have a wood burning stove in their living room that has provided heat for the main living area. And then we have a really wonderful neighborhood that we're in, and it's a very good sense of community. And so what's happened is that people who have either had generators, or as various houses have come back online, we have extension cords running across the street, and everybody has been sharing what they have with or people around them. So I do kind of want to mention it, because some of the things we're going to be talking about today is some of the themes that come out of that are having sort of belt and suspenders approaches, multiple sources of energy to build in our resiliency, and then kind of that sense of community as well is really very much a part of the energy resilience story that we're going to be kind of talking about here today. And then I think the overlay of it is just realizing that as our region is going to be, unfortunately, probably experiencing more and more of these kind of extreme weather conditions, that we do need to be thinking differently about how our energy systems are structured from how they maybe have been in the past. I think there was an article in PGE had an interesting comment in it, somebody from PGE that was mentioning that the 100-year storms are happening every 2 years now. And so it's just a really different situation that we're in. So with that, kind of maybe next slide. So what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to start with just kind of giving a little bit of foundation from sort of a context standpoint. We've got a lot of terms that we'll be using that are pretty specific to just sort of the energy industry, and so I want to make sure that we are giving everybody a chance to kind of know the story behind them and the context behind them. So we'll talk about microgrids and what microgrids can be used for, and then we'll get into an overview of the project that we did for City of Tigard, and then the results of that, and then kind of the next steps from there. So next slide, please. Thank you. So starting with the concept of a microgrid. So what, as the name kind of applies, it's sort of a miniature grid within a grid. And in most cases, the intent is not to replace the main grid during normal conditions. Our grids are really amazing, and they're really generally very reliable. And so the goal is not to replace them, but it's more to, again, add sort of that belt and suspenders sort of approach of adding that additional layer of resiliency when we do have these really extreme conditions that make it harder for those grid systems to work. So in a typical building like the house that I'm in right now, when it's grid connected, then everything is fine, right? Everything works as normal. And then when there's any sort of outage, right, the energy source for that building goes offline. What a microgrid does is it adds in energy sources on site, and they can be in various forms: solar panels with a battery, it can be a generator, it could be a wood-fired stove in my case, although that's not quite a microgrid, but a different source of fuel, right, energy. And so what that does is that allows that when the grid goes down, those buildings can continue to operate with those local sources, and they can continue some level of operation and function in that off-grid condition. And that's kind of that key definition of what the microgrid is. Next slide. So benefits of microgrids, there's kind of three main ones that we'll be talking about here. So the resilience, obviously, is the one I think forefront in everybody's mind right now. But there is also a really important sustainability benefit of microgrids when they are still grid connected and when the grid is operating as normal. called Grid Interactive Buildings, and we'll talk on that a little bit. And then there's a financial benefit. Oftentimes the resources, the generation resources and storage resources on a microgrid can also be used to help with energy cost reductions by shifting when grid power is being used versus on-site is being used, and it can help facilities avoid some of the higher cost times. And so there can be operating cost reductions that come with microgrids. Next slide, please. Okay, so components for a microgrid, this can change, but for buildings, particularly kind of commercial buildings or like the library that we're talking about here today, what we generally see is sort of these main categories of storage and generation. So again, the utility is one of our resources in normal operations. It's the one that we'll rely on a lot. We do also generally see PV paired with battery. PV by itself does not operate as a microgrid. I do have PV on my house, and it's not doing me a whole lot of good right now because I don't have a battery. It has to be paired with a battery to be able to work in an off-grid configuration. If I did have a battery, I would be totally fine right now, but that's the next thing on the list for home renovation. And then the generator. And again, I do want to mention this is that even though we always like to start with some of the zero emissions resources like PV and battery, generators do still have a place in that equation. And again, it's building that resilience as we build in multiple layers of energy resources. And so we do still often see generators as part of the solution. And then all of those kind of combined help us to support the building systems themselves. Next slide, please. All right, so obviously the energy resilience piece I think is, again, probably very clear to everybody in the current situation. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the sustainability side because this is a little bit more of a newer concept. And it's a concept called grid interactive buildings. And what it's really doing is that we're kind of entering a new era in the energy world. And it's in many ways is a change in the relationship between buildings and the utilities. And so we kind of see in the traditional one, historically it has been very one directional. It's kind of buildings just said what they needed and then the grids provided it, right? And so there's this one-way street. What's happening now is there's really moving into this kind of this two-way dialogue between buildings and the grids. And we're just seeing it in a lot of different forms. Obviously, there's things like on-site solar, which goes back onto the grid, right? So we have two directions there. But there's also getting into storage. And so sometimes the grid will actually ask for the storage, like a battery to discharge to help support the grid. And sometimes the battery will discharge to help to support the building. And sometimes the battery will charge from the grid or charge from the PV, right? So we're starting to see sort of this multivariable approach within how buildings and grids interact. And so it really is this kind of this fundamental difference in how those two are related. Next slide, please. And so it brings us into this concept that's called a grid interactive building. And these are kind of the definitions that come from DOE, sort of the chart on the left there with the four pillars that we see. And what we see is that it's still an efficient building. So we still want to do good building design. And we want it to be flexible, connected, and smart. And that's kind of the real difference between sort of buildings as we've historically thought about them and buildings as they come, is that, again, they become these just a more kind of dynamic system that's able to work in partnership with the grid as opposed to not. And this applies right now with what we're seeing in kind of the current system. There's been a lot of asks, actually both from electrical and the gas utilities, asking for people to, expand their temperature range in their house for just a little bit, even if you have power, just to kind of make sure we're not putting so much stress on the grid. We see the same thing happening when we see the heat waves, right? The ask for people to put a little bit less stress on the grid. And if we kind of all join together, then as a community, right, we're able to keep the grids and also natural gas systems, but just in general, keep the energy systems up and running. Next slide, please. And then even kind of outside of sort of these some critical areas, this also plays really closely into the goal of decarbonizing the grids and the energy sectors. I don't know why, so for some reason that rest of that slide isn't loading there. But what we see here is this is the hourly emissions profile at a national level for the electric grid, kind of today, and then looking forward to 2050. And what we see is that the electricity sector, and this is actually one of the more conservative outlooks. There's others that are much more optimistic that show it at zero. But what we're seeing here, the kind of the point of the slide is showing that the emissions of the electricity sector are coming down significantly. And that's kind of the goal of the energy decarbonization movement, is really getting it to the point where we're really relying more on renewables. But what we see is that the shape of it still kind of stays the same. And so what that tells us is that the grids are still having to rely on some of the higher emission generation sources during sort of those peak seasons, right, summers and winters. And so by having buildings that can operate a little bit more, right, we can be a participant in just changing our loads a little bit, so that way we're not causing those peaks. That allows the grids to use more of those lower emission resources, and that kind of helps us all collectively get to a zero emissions electricity sector. Next slide, please. And we actually have a great example of this locally. This was from the heat wave this summer, which feels like a lifetime ago, given what we're dealing with right now. But what we see here was that I think it was 108 that week, and the grids were pretty stressed. And so PGE put out what they call the demand response program signal. And so anybody who was enrolled, and this is a voluntary program, anybody who was enrolled got a little text message. If you're on the residential side, we got a text message that says, please, if you can reduce your loads between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. tomorrow, please do so. And so like for my family, for example, we just changed our temperature set points, and we didn't run any, major appliances or anything during that time period. And as a result, collectively, again, as a community, we were able to have a significant decrease. 90 megawatts is a significant decrease in loads, and that helped to stabilize the grids overall and keep everybody up and running. So everybody could at least have a little bit of air conditioning still, right? So it's really kind of important in sort of this community level. Sorry, I have a small coworker who just joined me. Excuse me a moment, please. Sorry. It's been a week. All right, next slide, please. Just some other projects in the area. Beaverton Public Safety Center was actually the first project that I'm aware of that was in the region that did something like what we're talking about here. They have on-site batteries, PV, and a generator that are grid connected and grid disconnected. They were the very first ones to do it, so we had collectively had some good lessons learned on that one, but they are up and running. And that is, again, with that goal of being able to provide both that grid support and that sustainability piece of it, and then also really helping them with that resiliency element of it. Next slide, please. And this one was also really unique in the fact that it was as a pilot project with PGE, and so working really closely with them and their team to help make it successful was a really important part of that project. Next slide. Okay, so that's a little bit of table setting. Now we can kind of get into the weeds of what our study was. So the goal of our study was to look at microgrids at 3 different scales for City of Tigard. We looked at it at the single building scale, which is what we'll be talking about today. So specifically for the library, we looked at the neighborhood scale, and then we looked at a much larger district scale, because kind of looking long term, those are the 3 scales that we want to be looking at as we start to introduce more of kind of the sustainable and resilient energy systems into our communities. What we did find is that from a technical standpoint, the library was a good candidate for the single building microgrid. It had good potential for solar, both on the roof as well as with carport canopies, and then it does have space on site for a battery system, and that we felt that there was a viable way to be able to interconnect these into the existing electrical system. And so from the technical standpoint, we found it to be a viable candidate for a local single building microgrid. Next slide, please. We looked at a number of different options. This is kind of from tier 2, but it just, this was sort of the second scale of what we were looking at, but I just wanted to share it just so to kind of give some context for how we do our approach. We look at a number of different variables when we look at microgrid studies. So we look at how is it going to be used. We look at the scale of it. We look at what the duration is. Are we talking hours? Are we talking days? We look at what the PV potential is, and then what kind of loads we want to run. Do we want to run all the loads, or is it just critical loads? And then that brings us into sort of helping us understand our battery sizing and our scenarios. Again, this was for tier 2, which was that neighborhood scale one, but similar sort of process that we went through on the tier 1. Next slide, please. So one thing that we found is we looked at was this idea of net zero energy. So net zero energy is can you generate as much on-site with renewable resources as you use in a year? It's a good metric for some questions, but it's from a resiliency standpoint, it's a little bit can be a little bit tricky because generating a lot of excess in the summer doesn't help you during a major snowstorm in the winter. So it's a little bit different when we talk about resiliency, but from a sustainability standpoint, it's kind of can be a more unifying metric that we can look at. What we did find is that we wouldn't be able to achieve net zero energy with the systems we have on site, but it would have really pretty good production. I mean, almost 50% offsets potentially if we did both roof and carports. And so again, going back to what we look at when we evaluate potential for PV, it did seem like a good candidate with having enough space on site to have some pretty meaningful sized systems that would offset quite a bit of the load annually. Next slide. And so this is getting a little bit more into the weeds of the PV system. I do think kind of the main points to highlight on this one is that, as is, I think we all can understand, is that when we get into the winter, Oregon is gray. It's gray and rainy here in the winter, right? So we don't have as much solar production. And so again, when we look at this from a resilience standpoint, PV systems don't necessarily reduce, or at least not significantly reduce, battery system size or generator system size needs, because we do still have to plan for that kind of that worst case scenario that the power goes out when the panels are covered in snow. And so we do keep those system sizes large. But if we did have a case in the summer, which unfortunately we're also at risk for now with kind of the extreme heat conditions, in the summer, we do have quite a bit of generation that happens, and so it can be a really good part of the resilience. So again, this sort of brings us back to the idea is that we're not really relying on any one source to cover all of our needs, but knitting together multiple sources to be able to help us achieve our resilience and sustainability goals. Next slide. So where we land, and this is out of one of the modeling tools that we used, and we looked at a number of different scenarios. It doesn't show on this one because this is the size that worked for us, but when we did smaller battery sizes or less PV, we would have days that showed up as red on this particular model that would show that they weren't meeting their resilience goals. What we're seeing here is that the battery size that we ended up landing on, which is about I think it was a 1,000 kW and 3,000 kWh battery system size, which is a decently sized system, but not unusual for single building microgrids, would be enough to kind of meet our loads, most days of the year, right? We still have those kind of extreme conditions, which is why we would still want to have a generator paired with it. But in general, a battery of that size would provide sufficient whole building resiliency through really most of the year. Last slide, please. Okay, so The recommendations based on kind of what we had from a technical standpoint was whole building microgrid, again, with that diversity of resources, so PV and battery and generator. From the sustainability side, the recommendation is to have the PV interconnected with PGE, so that way when it produces more than library needs, it's putting the excess back on. And then the battery, similar sort of thing, is that it can be a resource for that larger grid decarbonization and have it interconnected within the PGE network. So I think Gary will kind of touch on this, but from the technical perspective, the recommendation would be to pursue funding to be able to continue with the microgrid process. I think that was what I had.
Well, thank you very much, Karina. That was excellent. So next up is our stakeholder considerations for microgrid implementation. So the purpose of this is to give council sort of a broad understanding of what implementation means, how widely it impacts the city's operations and various departments. So this is meant not to go more than 20 minutes, so just a couple minutes each stakeholder. And we'll start with Jenny Hall from the Energy Trust of Oregon, giving some perspectives on a project partner in the BRIC grant and its relationship to Energy Trust program.
Thanks, Gary. You hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is, as Gary says, Jenny Hall. I'm a program strategy manager with Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit organization, and we use cash incentives and technical assistance, among other tools, to help families, businesses, and communities achieve their clean energy goals. I lead our portfolio of work focused on initiatives that support community energy resilience and grid flexibility. And I have had the pleasure to work alongside Gary on this project from the very beginning. He's been a tireless advocate and champion seeking ways to incorporate clean energy and community resilience into the city's planning process. Truly been a pleasure. As Karina described in detail, this proposed solar plus battery storage project at the library is an example of a single building microgrid, similar to projects we have seen installed at Portland's Fire Station 1, Beaverton Public Safety Center, as you saw, the Anderson Readiness Center, and the Oregon Treasury Resilience Building in Salem. By choosing solar plus storage microgrid at the library, instead of focusing solely on a generator, for example, for resilience, the city's will not only receive the benefits of energy resilience during a power outage, but also receive the ongoing benefits of clean renewable energy, reducing the building's utility bills every other day of the year. And this project was also designed to include a smart battery storage system that is able to provide the sort of grid interactive capability that Karina talked about, and it can be called upon by PGE during periods of peak energy usage in exchange for additional bill credits, expanding the utility bill savings benefits to the city for the building. This project represents a tremendous example of how the city of Tigard is working to align both carbon reduction and local resilience goals for the community. And should the city choose to pursue this project, we look forward to the opportunity to continue to provide support with incentives and technical assistance. We see this project as an important example for other communities to consider. Thank you for the opportunity to join the discussion. Trying to keep it short for you, Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Karina. Terrific. Next, PGE representative KJ will speak to PGE's continuing partnership in implementation of a microgrid. KJ?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me, Council President and Council. It's nice to see you all, and I hope everybody's stayed warm over the past few days. PGE is proud and pleased to support the City of Tigard's microgrid project. The proposed project at the Tigard Library would construct a community microgrid to support resilience for both the facility as well as the larger community in the city. PGE was supportive of the creation and funding of the Community Renewable Energy Grant Program in House Bill 2021. As climate change accelerates the threat of natural disasters, Partnering with our communities to incorporate resiliency will be imperative. Tigard's microgrid project will integrate solar and a battery energy storage system that will be capable of supporting the building load during outage events, while also supporting the larger community as a warming or cooling shelter should needs arise. We are confident that working together with our customers and communities, we will reduce emissions and continue building Oregon's clean energy future that is resilient and affordable. PGE looks forward to partnering with the City of Tigard on this very innovative project. Thank you.
Thank you, KJ. Appreciate you participating today on behalf of PGE, the many moving parts over there that have been involved in this to date, and supporting the BRIC grant originally, including in particular the 2 letters of support you've written for the grant opportunities we see ahead. Thank you.
Of course.
Other city staff that are involved in or impacted by microgrid at the library. I want to start with Kevin, who I've been working with and coordinating with quite a bit, because there's a lot going on at the library, not just the potential microgrid. So Kevin, can you please join the group and speak to the HVAC project and other things you have going on there?
Good evening, President Councilor Hu and Council. So as you've heard, this is a very highly coordinated effort to get this underway. We're working right now on the library upgrade to the air conditioning, the HVAC system. And when we started working on that, we contacted with R&W Engineering, who actually did an assessment of our system and then has designed a new chiller plant for us. As we were working on that, Gary's project on the microgrid, he was working on that simultaneously, and we coordinated PAE engineering with R&W, and it was very nice to see how well the 2 engineering groups and 2 contractors worked together to ensure that the final project that we're working on is going to be seamless in the implementation. And so what we've done with the HVAC project is incorporate basic pathways and engineering to accommodate a future grid, a microgrid, as well as future capital improvement projects. So we've done this in coordination with Gary, PAE, R&W Engineering, as well as Halstead and her team at the library. And so I just wanted to assure everyone that's listening tonight that we are working on all fronts to make sure that this project goes as well as it can. And we're doing everything we can to prepare for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Terrific. Next up, I think Mike is with us with Public Works to talk a bit about how the library operates as an emergency operations center and heating and cooling logistics center.
Thanks, Gary. Councilor Hu. Council, you've heard a lot of technical stuff. I'm more of the operations guy. And what you'll hear from me is just some background as it relates to the library and the Burgess Community Room as the alternate emergency operations center. There's 2 reasons that we would move from our primary spot to the Burgess Community Room, and that is facility compromised at the primary spot, which is the Public Works Operations Building. And the other would be the size of an incident, specifically a seismic event, which would cause our Emergency Operations Center, which is tapped currently with the amount of people that currently operate in it, to expand considerably, almost that again in half. So the size of it would constitute us having to move over to the community room for a temporary basis till we were through the incident. The options, we give the community another option, especially as already been mentioned, the weather that has taken the power out of many homes and businesses throughout the region right now. Our facility has been provided warming and cooling centers, also pandemic type activities with points of dispensing over the years. That library is where the city departments have developed their prospective continuity of operations in the technical room before we were able to get our two mobile pods that we have up above City Hall. And we also conduct numerous emergency and safety trainings for city, county, and the region in the facility. One of the most, or I guess the most common factor for my piece in this is just to kind of encourage us to continue our efforts on resiliency and redundancy. And I think this microgrid will provide us that opportunity. Subject to questions, that's all I have. Gary.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate this. I think it's appropriate to acknowledge your exceptional work in area of emergency operations and your commendation recently. Thank you for being a partner in this microgrid from the beginning. Next up, I'd like Eric to speak for IT, and he's gracefully agreed to do this, being a latecomer to what was started with Mike Nolop. And so please, Eric, tell us about how server backup protocol and requirements can benefit from the microgrid.
Yeah, a lot of this can help with business continuity for the city, providing services like GIS for knowing where things are in the event of emergency, as well as providing a good way for communication to happen. With a microgrid, we kind of become an island in an emergency, and being able to provide critical services in the event of, a larger unavailability for the community gives us a huge advantage to really give the city of Tigard a leg up when it comes to coming back into service and being able to provide critical services, whether it be water, police department activities. Being able to have a location that is essentially, triple redundant with generators or PV or batteries to house our systems in the event of an extended outage really puts us at a leg up for whatever disaster may come. So that risk mitigation is huge for us. Not to mention all the benefits we get from the footprint reduction from lowering our carbon footprint by not relying as much on gas production that PGE may use for power generation. So with our compute and networking capacity, shifting some of that load onto photovoltaics is huge. And as part of this, as we grow, I feel like it would really help us be a unique, star in amongst cities, being able to provide a lot of these services in the events of outages or disasters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate that. And last but not least, of course, is our host at the library. Halstead has agreed to join us and sort of explain a little bit about how emergency operations, she experiences that at the library, but in particular, and to the engagement interest of Halstead.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening, Council. I'm Halstead Bernard. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Tigard Public Library. And yes, as Gary has alluded to, I've taken part in EOC operations testing and practice with Mike Lewick and some of my leadership team colleagues. It's an incredibly important place that we have a sufficient EOC location. The community room, as counselors will know, because we've spent meetings there together, is a large space that would be able to support long-range EOC operations should we need them in the future. And I hope we don't. But I'd like to speak to our educational program because to support the successful implementation and launch of such an important step forward in Tigard's climate resilience, the library team would like to do what we do best, and that's offering engaging, informative resources so our community can learn more about solar-powered programs and specifically the microgrid. To do this, we are committed to incorporating education about the microgrid into our programming lineup at the library. And we'll also be using our usual publicity channels like our Books and Bits newsletter, our website, the WCCLS website, our print brochures, our social media, all those ways that we get our information out to our community. So far as our programming lineup, in the past, you might know that we've collaborated with Solar Oregon to hold events that educate our community about home solar options. And looking to the future, our Reader Services Division is developing a new series of events, partnering with Solar Oregon again, as well as Oregon Clean Power Cooperative and the city's Community Development Department. So coming up this March, we'll offer a presentation on Solar for All, rooftop, community, and co-op solar with Solar Oregon and Oregon Clean Power Cooperative. In May, we'll offer a presentation about the library microgrid called Community-Driven Transformation, Turning a Library into an Emergency Operations Center. And this September, we'll offer another program as yet to be determined. Our library team is, as always, so excited to support this microgrid project with engaging, informative education and resources for our community, not only this year, but well into our shared climate resilient future. Thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thank you very much, Halstead. I just want to conclude this panel portion with a couple of comments about related to Councilor Wolf's question that was answered in an email to you all earlier today. And so that has to do with how are we gonna implement this? Is there funding? What's the schedule? And some other engagement considerations. So first on the funding, as was included in your packet, we're looking at a microgrid cost of about $4 million. And that is the cost of the PV, solar, and parking lot canopies for generation, the cost of a 1.5 megawatt battery, and the controller and ancillary equipment needed to operate it. And the schedule relates to both the funding source requirements, but also, as Kevin was relaying, the very sort of complicated improvement schedule with the HVAC system, lighting system, the Banner Creek Trail, and other things that are happening around there. So, and of course, to put PV on a roof, you need to have a roof that's ready for that. So there is also the maintenance of the city's roof, which would need to be done prior to installation. So that all puts it in the 25-6-7 window for implementation. Grants being applied for this spring, the standby generation aid in construction from PGE is available upon enrollment, and other funding sources, including potentially the City of Tigard general fund, and how that can be paid back through the new investment tax credit, which we've been in discussions with the I&I committee recently. Halstead mentioned libraries' involvement and engagement, but there will also be, that is the near term, involving citizens and making this project aware to them, but there will also be a website that carries this through that should be posted the next month or so, place to promote this and also post the changes and activities as they come. In addition, when the microgrid is up and running, there is going to be a monitor in the lobby that will be interactive. So the library learning tools will be expanded by including that real-time ability to observe the power generation and use and direction of the energy. There's a panel like that in the Beaverton Safety Center, which I've seen, which is very effective, I think, as a tool going forward. But it will be a very, you can be able to see the panels from Hall Boulevard, so it's a high visibility project that I think will engage as we begin to solarize the city and reduce our GHG emissions through rooftop solar implementation generally across the city. Let's see. We also are very innovative, I think. And Kenny may want to join me on this, describing this, but we are entering into a contract with the Oregon Clean Power Coalition. And this is a group that will help us apply for the Oregon Department of Energy Clean Energy Grant. But they also will help us with engagement. And part of their program is creates an investment opportunity for the citizens of Tigard to basically invest in this project by making investments through their cooperative model. And I think this is a very exciting way to move forward into the community with this project. And so my thought, Kenny, if you want to chime in here, was to elaborate a little bit on that Oregon Clean Power Cooperative and with the general context of climate action planning. I know you weren't planning to interject here, but if you want to take a minute.
Oh, thanks, Gary. That's okay. I think you covered it really well. Let's keep going.
Okay, thank you. So this concludes the presentation, and I hope that the council has questions at this point and can have a discussion and cover things that we haven't mentioned that you want to know more in depth about, and then followed by consideration of the resolution that would support the funding effort.
Thank you, Gary. Councilors, any questions, comments? Councilor Singh, please go ahead. Oh, I'll get to you next, Councilor Wolf.
Thank you.
Councilor Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary, and all the staff that have been working on this. This is really exciting. I'm curious to know if anyone has spoken up showing any concern about this project. Is there, and do you think there will be any pushback from any organizations or groups? And I'm thinking just beyond concerns about potential upfront cost and potential challenges for sustaining programming and personnel support for emergencies. Would there be any other reason not to proceed with this? And then I also responded to an email from Emily about future funding opportunity from the recent legislation that was passed. I don't know if you know, I've received that email yet, but the climate resilience package that was passed at the state level, that's law now. It looks like Department of Human Services will be implementing the deployment of that grant. So there's another opportunity there to tap into to resource this, I think, hopefully. And I think the last comment I would just mention is that I would really encourage us to reach out to some of our most vulnerable community members once this project sort of goes public, to really, you know, verify and center their needs in this project. And, you know, that includes figuring out ways to hear from, you know, seniors, especially those living alone, those that have disabilities or are homeless, or homeless community brothers and sisters out there. So yeah, so I just had one question about just the challenges, and then the other two were just comments. So thank you. Oh, you're muted.
You are muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilor Singh. I know you're on the I understand you're on the library board or liaison to it, and I think your question is to Halsted, perhaps conflicts between EOC use of the library and programming, or whether or not there is a concern there. Halsted, do you have a response to that? And if that's right, if that's what you meant, Councilor Singh.
Well, I would say that if we were in an EOC situation, we certainly would not be focused on providing programming. I think there could potentially be a conflict of being an EOC at the same time as being a warming center or cooling center. But we have been creative in the past when we've had conflicts in our community room with our warming centers and cooling centers, and we will continue to be creative and offer solutions throughout the building. I have not heard any feedback from any community members who isn't excited about the climate resiliency goal of the council. And I would expect that if we provide sufficient education and resources for our community, they will also be on board with a microgrid at the library.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Singh, I did see your suggestion for a funding opportunity, and I hope we don't stop there and start generating ideas for funding. I think we want to know all of them right away. And I think engaging vulnerable communities is, I think, our equity vision for this city sort of really requires us to go there first and often and be sure that we engage those folks. And I know the library is set up and has in the past and continues on a daily basis to serve them. So I'm excited that the library is the site here, and appreciate your comments.
Karina, you have comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to address one of the questions there. So you had asked the question on whether or not there's potential any concerns that might come from community groups or community in general around this. What I would say is what we see in terms of the energy world, there can be some really good conversations around sort of the whole life environmental cost of some of the technologies that we're talking about. So both batteries, PVs, and then generators as well. And what I would say is that when you get kind of farther into the, it's like with anything, right? You have to get kind of farther into the details of it. But it, like all of these, there's kind of pros and cons, and there's good ways to use these technologies and less, good ways to use the technologies. Part of what we did for the study, the City of Tigard, as part of this larger FEMA study that we did, is that we did do what's called a whole life carbon comparison between generators and batteries, looking at them from the time of, the initial extraction of the raw materials and then all the way into end of life and recycling. And what we did find is that batteries, which are one of the ones I think that are getting a lot of question of like kind of that whole life impact, that when they are used in that grid connected as a grid resource, they really do pay for, as you might say, pay for kind of their emissions impact because they're part of that larger system decarbonization. But we certainly do want to be, mindful of how we use them and make sure that we're knowing that there's always an impact with building something new and that we're doing something really valuable with what we've created. And then what we also found is that looking at generators, which are generally fossil fuel resources, either, diesel or natural gas, again, there can be really valid concerns about that use of fossil fuels. But in the resilience condition, again, what the math kind of shows is that they can be a really valuable resource in that very specific condition. We obviously don't want to be running them 24/7, but when partnered with the PV and the battery, they are kind of part of that larger solution. And again, it's being thoughtful and honest about how and why we're using these technologies, but that they do provide kind of that larger value. So I think, the educational stuff that we've talked about here, I think is really important. And there can be a really, good, deep conversation that can happen around that as part of that education. But hopefully that would help address some of the concerns that might come from community.
Thank you. Councilor Wolf, please go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. Gary, first of all, thank you for just convening this group. It was a really great presentation. It's kind of in a very small scale technologies. I'm listening via my phone. I'm trying to track and watch just the live feed, which is a little bit delayed. So I'll certainly come back and review it again another time, but really appreciate the information and in particularly the follow up on what's timeline and our funding source options. So I don't have any questions at this time, although I will say as well that when the tax incremental financing committee, when TIP grants met in December, there was actually an interest of our downtown owners wondering, are there panel options for their rooftops downtown? And so I think from that perspective, thought that would be a great thing to add to our downtown vision as we drive on 99. So just appreciate the information and thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Councilor Shaw?
Great, thank you, Council President, and thank you to our presenters and stakeholders. Very much appreciate it. I have both a process question and then just an overall question, but thrilled to be seeing this is coming about. I think since I was elected, I've been asking for resiliency, redundancy strategy because of things like the Cascadia subduction zone and so forth. So excited to see this moving forward. The process question I have is and I know we had a July 11th, 2023 meeting where initial information was provided. Tonight we're being given additional information about some potential clean power coalition and potential opportunities for investment. So is it the resolution that we're being asked to adopt seems premature or maybe not needed, but perhaps this is a question for City Attorney Rajala. Do we need that in order to seek grants or seek funding, or does that give our stakeholders some confidence that this is something we want to move forward with? Because at this point, we're still giving direction to staff. So I'm a little confused as to the resolution and giving direction.
Certainly. So that really depends on the specific grants themselves. Some might require a resolution, others won't. So at this point, having not seen all the universe of grants that we'll be applying for, I can't say for sure, but if the resolution changes, you can always come back and amend it, but this might be a good starting point.
Great. Thank you so much, City Attorney. That helps me from a process standpoint. And then also, again, I think this is a worthwhile project. I am concerned about the cost. We've floated around the 4 million. I know in one report it said 6 million, and that was accounting for the roof structure and the HVAC, which we have found as a city funding for. We know that the prices are going to escalate, and I guess I just want to note here that I'm concerned about not recognizing exactly what the funding mechanisms are, knowing that we don't have a crystal ball, we can't. But the report was pretty loose about saying how we were going to pay for this. And I just want to make sure that at some point we could maybe mid-2024 come back and outline in maybe an Excel spreadsheet where that funding is, where we think the funding is going to come from, and what we're going to need in order to further ensure this project gets completed. So that would be the direction I would like to provide. And again, thank you very much to our stakeholders, and excited about this moving forward.
Thank you.
I don't know, Gary, Oh, sorry. I don't know if Gary wanted to address the cost or not, or just use it as direction.
Oh, well, yes, I can address the cost. The cost that was provided by A&R Solar began with the 3.41 that was identified by PAE in their report, and added an escalation cost to put it up to 3.9. So they were, I think, projecting at a high level a couple of years before procurement would happen based on the grant funding. So there is a percentage in there that they've included. Of course, there will be that figure is the cost of construction. The city has additional costs of project management and some other things too. So overall cost to the city may be greater. I appreciate your interest in wanting to understand more clearly and specifically how this funding will occur, and we'll be working on that. Our contract is the Oregon Clean Power Coalition is part of that effort to refine our funding strategy. So thank you. Did I answer your other question as well? Or?
Yes, thank you, Gary. I think it's just if we can come back maybe mid-year and just have an update
Yeah.
on the financial component, that'd be fantastic.
Will
Thank
do.
you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I believe we do have opportunity in the future to, as Gary put it, refine the funding mechanism. So definitely revisit this in the future. So, Youth Councilor Vogel, do you have any comments or questions?
No questions at this time, but just a comment of, again, thank you guys for the time put into this. I really appreciate it. And I love getting to learn new things. And I love that we got some clarity on that, so, as well as just the education aspect. I think that's going to be really helpful moving forward. And I really appreciate the effort put into that.
Thank you. And as for me, I also want to thank everybody, it's city teammate and external partners for your work and for presenting tonight. I think in addition to Karina, there might be a couple of other people who may not have power based on the lighting of the camera. So I really appreciate you showing up and presenting. For me, from last week we were talking about electrifying our transportation system, also from the equity point of view. And I asked about city's role in providing electricity, and I'm really very excited for this project as a potential, small scale project to begin with as a model for the future of how we can work together to scale up, from one building to perhaps the entire city, and especially with the focus on equity. As Councillor Singh pointed out, those who suffer the most in this extreme weather condition are those who can afford the least to electrify their home. Or so I'm really excited about that. And also, hopefully by the time we get the funding and start to build the technology, the battery technology especially, because my understanding based on the report is that the most resilient model have the really, really high capacity battery, but it's just super, super expensive. So hopefully by the time we get funding, the technology will be, will be cheap enough where we can even have an upgrade to a bigger capacity battery at that point, so we can become more resilient. Another question, one question I do have is perhaps not directly on point. It's more of it's a resiliency too, as Karina pointed out, that even hypothetical model in 2050, we will still see the same peak, just because. So it's really important to base on the design of the building. So are we, are we thinking about maybe renovating the library in any other way so it will be even more energy efficient, or is that not part of the equation for this project?
Well, if you're asking me, I'd speak for Kevin and say that all of his projects are upgrading the library. The HVAC system, for example, currently can't handle some of the heating and cooling loads, and which is why we're doing the HVAC upgrade to make it more resilient and more effective for that mission. The lighting replacements too will be lower loads. So I think yes is the answer to your question. There's a lot going on there to make the library more efficient on top of the microgrid.
Yeah, and I would add to that, so when we do the roof as well, part of the roof bid is to do more insulation on the roof. So like Gary said, everything that we do for capital improvements is definitely focused on better resiliency, better economies of the building for use of power. So we're not looking at a whole building remodel per se, but systematic upgrades.
Wonderful. Again, thank you for the presentation. So, councilors, we're considering motion resolution number 24-03. Unless there are further comments or questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 24-03.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Resolution number 24-03, a resolution in support of the Tigard Library Microgrid project to improve the city's resilience and emergency operations and to reduce municipal greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. Would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes. Youth Councillor Bogle for an advisory vote.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Wolf.
Yes.
Council President Hu.
Yes. The motion to approve the resolution is adopted by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Thank you. All right. So the next item on our agenda is council goals update. Senior Management Analyst Hendricks will introduce this item. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. It's good to see you virtually. My name is Nicole Hendricks, and I'm the Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office here at Tigard. I'm joined tonight by several presenters, including our Program Manager for Strategic Initiatives, Kim Azell, our Community Development Director, Kenny Asher, our IT Director, Maya Delgado, and Chief McDonald. So thank you for having us to give a progress report on the 2023-2025 City Council goals. Our presentation tonight is meant to be a high-level briefing of our accomplishments and opportunities for each one of our 4 goals that are shown on the right. So that includes our reduce houselessness goal, address climate change, modernize and improve city services, and enhance community safety and access. We also listed our community promise, or our 5 E's, just as a reminder of what considerations we keep at the forefront of this work. And so throughout the year, we will bring forward more detailed briefings on each council goal as kind of the need arises, like we did last year. And so our ask tonight is just to receive the high-level briefing and then offer any questions or guidance based on the information given. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to our Program Manager, Kim Azell, for an update on houselessness.
Thanks, Nicole. I'd like to start just by acknowledging and thanking all of our community service providers and nonprofits who have been working round the clock since last Friday, providing a 24-hour emergency shelter. A lot of them have been out in their personal vehicles, finding folks who are living outside, bringing them into shelter. Just to acknowledge that while we talk about houselessness. So a year ago, Council adopted 5 strategies directed, and I'm happy to say that we've completed 2 and are in progress with 3. We continue to try to create more transitional housing and secure wraparound services, but we have successfully adopted a time, place, manner ordinance that was completed last May and then was updated in the fall. The grant program to support businesses was completed at the end of 2023. We continue to work to secure ongoing state funding. Nicole Hendricks leads a lot of that work. And then we are continuing to provide council with options for tenant protections. And you've heard from Skylar Warren a few times this year about that effort. Next slide, please. Some key accomplishments from the last year. These are updated since the last time we did these slides. So time, place, manner, which was adopted in May, was updated this last fall, and we'll continue to review and refine time, place, manner as more direction comes from the courts and from the state, and as well as from our community and service providers. Just Compassion Campus construction has begun. So Just Compassion off of Hall Boulevard is currently a 20-bed shelter, but it's going to expand in the next year to a 60-bed shelter, as well as providing many other resources at their site. I know many of you in the room were able to attend that groundbreaking. It was very exciting. As I mentioned, the Tigard Business Sustainability Fund was established at the end of last year in partnership with the Tigard Chamber of Commerce. You can go to their website now and look at that application. We did also update resource cards for local nonprofits and officers. Those include information about clothing closets, food, shelter, meals, and we're continuing to update those regularly. And we are about to do another update this month that will include a Spanish language version as well. And then I've been lucky enough to be invited by both the Town Center Advisory Commission and the Tigard Youth Advisory Council to do presentations on the council goal of reduced houselessness and what the city and county are doing in the last several months. Some opportunities looking forward into the second year of this goal. We're still looking to site and fund safe lots in Tigard. Cross your fingers. I think we're very close to being able to site our first one, working very closely with the church and the community, but just need to dot a few I's and cross a few T's before we can move forward. Like I said, we're continuing to review and refine time, place, manner ordinance as we learn more information. Still looking to expand any other services for our houseless community members, including still investigating a day storage solution to kind of bridge between now and when Just Compassion's Expanded Resource Center opens either late this year, early next year. And then Skylar continues to work on implementing tenant protections and policies designed to prevent houselessness from ever being a problem in the first place. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm up next. Good evening, everyone. Kenny Asher, Community Development Director, and I was asked to provide a little bit of an update to you all on your goal to address climate change, which I'm happy to do. You've already heard quite a bit tonight about some of that work, and a bit of what I have to say tonight is going to be a little bit repetitive, but I'm going to go fast. So to quickly remind you, you had 3 outcomes in the climate change goal that you can see on the screen, along with 4 strategies. Happy to report that all 4 are underway in various ways. And we'll go to the next slide. Many of these accomplishments you have already heard about, so I won't read through them. Happy to answer questions about any of them at the end if you have any. We have kind of made hay about our silver designation with SolSmart and the work that we are doing to plan for River Terrace, the influence that we're starting to have in the region through the Zero Coalition and through other organizations that Tigard is now starting to take part in. And I will just say there is a lot of momentum building around this whole body of work. You heard about our connecting with the Tigard Youth Advisory Council. We have had 2 meetings now in the community with community folks who wanted to come and talk about this issue with us. That will continue. And there is an internal work team. That last bullet, formed and meeting now to focus on citywide operations and community education. I think we have some opportunities on the next slide. I think I've mentioned before that we're trying to update the climate action report that we finished in 2022 to get better data. You heard a little bit about the library. We're trying to make better use of the federal tools and programs that are out there, including the direct pay or elective pay reimbursement option. That's the investment tax credit that we can take advantage of for EV purchases, for other clean energy work that we're doing. And a whole host of other things that aren't on the slides, but I just wanted to mention that we are talking to Washington County Public Health to get them in front of council to talk about the Tri-County Climate Health Report that was recently published. I think that was a request of Councillor Singh. We are connecting now and planning for that. We are hearing from others in the community about resilience hubs. Also, to your inquiry, Councillor Singh, yes, we know about the DHS funding under House Bill 3409. Also, there's new EPA funding. And resilience hubs, you'll hear more about this. They're not quite the same as emergency centers. And we will work hard to make sure that we're clear about what this kind of new climate-ready infrastructure is all about. But the Public Works Department is now working with PGE on water demand peak shaving and reimbursement. You heard a little bit about peak electricity usage. We also have peak water usage, and the Public Works Department is partnered with PGE to try to shave some of those peaks. You heard about the lighting project at the library, of course, the HVAC project at the library. Our finance group is looking at divestment planning away from fossil fuel investments and away from their financiers. And all the departments are going to be meeting regularly now to talk about a utilities work program and thinking about how we'll go forward with PGE. To your question, Council President Hu, about citywide electricity and also the provision of natural gas in the city. So that's a lot, I know, but there's too much to share just in a short couple of slides. I'm going to ask Emily Trich to wrap it up for me.
Thanks, Kenny. Assistant City Manager Trich chiming back in. Based on what we've heard in the previous agenda item and the terrific amount of activities going on related to this climate goal generally, we'd like to invite council that if you'd like further definition on the climate goal for discussion at our mid-year climate review or council goal review rather, we'd be happy to shape something up to facilitate that discussion. We always benefit from additional direction, and let us know if that's something we should plan for. Thank you.
Thank you both. So the next council goal we have is to modernize and improve city services. The outcomes listed for this goal are that the Tyler modules are implemented according to the assessment recommendations, and that our facility modernization project is at a design and construction phase. And we have the strategies listed below that I won't walk through, but those are currently in progress. So I will hand it over to our IT director to talk a little bit about the Tyler portion, and then I'll come back to talk about facilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Good evening, council members and teammates. My name is Maya Delgoda, and I'm the city's IT director and the project director for the Tigard Tyler ERP project. As Nicole mentioned in the previous slide, to support the council goal, modernize and improve city services, the city of Tigard signed a 10-year contract with the vendor Tyler Technologies to implement an enterprise resource planning ERP system. This new ERP solution integrates city's finances, payroll, human resources, purchasing, fixed assets, revenue streams, and civic services. Overall, a successful implementation of the Tigard Tyler system will integrate our business processes, data, eliminate duplicate data entry, and provide a trusted source to make data-driven decisions and increase the quality of the city's services to the community. In October 2023, we made significant progress and implemented the finance module, Tyler Munis Financials. The IT and the finance teams collaborated to train our end users and provide ongoing support during this transition. Today, departments have access to their purchasing information, including contracts, purchase orders, invoices, and payments. Managers and supervisors now have access to granular level information to their department budgets and consistent reports on budget to actuals. There's a reduction of printing of invoices and administrative time to process invoices. These are few examples of the benefits from the Tyler Munis implementation. Before the end of this fiscal year, which is fiscal year 24, we will be going live with an employee portal, timesheets, and payroll processing. This is a significant change for our Tigard teammates and will impact all teammates. We have successfully completed many training sessions, and more end-user training are underway to ensure all teammates have access and know how to navigate their individual portals and complete timesheets in the new T2 system. The new employee portal will provide secure access to an individual space to access teammate personal information at any time from anywhere. Teammates can see their accruals, pay history, and pay stubs. As a result, reduce printing and mailing of pay stubs. This not only supports our collective efforts to combat climate change, but also aligns with modern, efficient practices in payroll management. Next slide, please. Moving forward, project teams are working in defining scope, identifying resources and next module releases for utility billing, enterprise asset management, enterprise permitting and licensing, and associated customer portals. The T2 ERP project has been identified as a priority for the city, and we are working on identifying fiscal year 25 resource needs to meet the new timelines. As Nicole mentioned at the beginning, we will have detailed information about the project, including scope, schedule, and budget in our future council updates. With that, I'm going to hand over the next slide to Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the facility part of this goal, one of the key accomplishments that our team's been working on is evaluating multiple sites for police and public works facilities. So that's something that's kind of been in the works. And then opportunity-wise includes purchasing sites for the new public facilities, continue to plan a public facilities funding strategy, and then also plan communication around just awareness and education of the project. So this one still in the works, and at the end, if you have questions, I might point you to interim city manager Trich just to give more detail on this front. But yeah, so the next goal, Chief McDonald. Do you want to take it from here? Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. And hello again, Council. So enhanced community safety and access. So in that area, what the goal is there to improve the traffic safety, provide the equitable mobility options, and support the climate goals. You've heard a lot about some direction in climate goals tonight. We'll talk a little bit about the improving of traffic safety and equitable mobility options. Right there down in strategy 4.1, you can hit it with Hall Boulevard as an excellent example for that. We're all very familiar with that and the efforts that the city has made towards that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a second. And then Nicole just touched a little bit on like facilities, but then also talking about supporting the public safety service levels. One of those is, or a key component of that is passing the public safety renewal levy. You'll hear more about that next week when we report during council next week. And then improving mobility for all. And really that's talking about a lot of different mobility options. Some things as simple as trying to do some of the sidewalk connectivity projects that you've heard about. And then also the things like safe routes to school. Those feed into those as well. Next slide, please. And so some of the key accomplishments over the last year. So under like the safety part of this, I think it's fair to say that safety and access for Hall Boulevard, we've secured $3 million from the legislature for improvements on Hall, which is a substantial step in the right direction for that location. The police department, to try and improve access, we participate in 121 community events, share information about the public safety renewal levy. That was over the course of last year. A couple of you are very familiar with the renewal levy subcommittee that was formed. Currently, as we speak, there is the second poll for that renewal levy is actually going on right now, and that's part of what you'll be hearing about next week. And then I know that you're all familiar that we have dedicated an officer to downtown to address the increased calls for service down there. And additionally, I'd like to hit on just how much of an impact that's made on also the livability challenges, but also improving some of the outcomes for those folks that we have that repeated contact with. It's really making a difference for them. And so the opportunities that we have, obviously Hall Boulevard is a big one, and it's going to be a longer process than probably any of us would like, but it's going to require additional funding. And so it requires focused effort on continuing that. And then in the police department, we're going to continue working on those community engagement efforts in 2024. And one of those being, I'm going to go ahead and plug our community academy that's coming up here starting in March. We'll have that for 10 weeks. If there's anybody in the community that would like to be part of that, please feel free to reach out to me or to Maddie Bauer in the police department. She's actually the one coordinating it and running it. And any counselors that have not had the opportunity to go through it, I know that some of you have. If you'd like to go through, we'd love to have you be a part of that. And okay, I'll go ahead and stop with my sales pitch, and back to you, Nicole.
Thank you. That does complete our presentation update on council goals, and we welcome council's just thoughts and questions on what you've heard tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. I will start in reverse order this time. Start with Councillor Shaw to see if you have any questions or comments.
No questions, just comments on the extraordinary work that the staff has done for 2023 and catapulting us into 2024. So proud. So want to just thank all the staff for all your hard work. So thank you very much.
Councillor Wolf, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Council President Hu. No, just really ditto to Councillor Shaw. Really appreciate all the information that we just received and just the accomplishments and the hard work of the team. And I will join with Chief McDonald and do a plug for Community Academy. Such a wonderful opportunity to really learn about the many facets of our police department and community. And think it's a wonderful opportunity. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Youth Councillor Vogel, any comments, questions?
No questions, but yeah, just again, thank you so much. And I really appreciate the dedication put into this and the youth outreach with climate goals and houselessness. I've really loved being a part of that. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Nothing to add, just want to ditto what everyone's saying. Just a big thank you to entire Tigard City staff. Really proud. Thanks.
Yeah, just want to repeat, thank you so much. And as to Assistant City Manager Trish's question, I will be interested in further refining the climate issues and goals. And I think I brought up this before, but I would be interested in more learning opportunities on the council, as a council member. So that would be good. But other than that, I really appreciate everybody's hard work. Looking at your faces, I can't really, just say I'm so proud of any particular one because I'm really excited about all those different projects coming forward. So thank you so much. And please stay warm tonight and stay safe. So thank you. Okay, so next item on agenda, we don't have executive sessions and we already talked about a non-agenda item. So is there a motion for adjournment?
Council President Hu, may I make one comment just before I make a motion to adjourn?
Oh, please, of course.
Great. And I'm sure I speak for the council. I just want to really, again, thank Public Works, our police department, and our CERT volunteers for all the work they're doing tonight. We saw firsthand what not having power does, and people still called in and our stakeholders. So kudos to them, including having their children be present too. So just want to give a big, huge shout out to just all of our first responders and those who are working to make sure that our Tigard community is safe. So, and thank you, Interim Chief McDonald, so much. I don't know if anyone else would like to say anything, but if not, I'm happy to make a motion to adjourn our council meeting tonight.
I second the motion.
Second motion. Any other final comments? No. Okay. So I echo Councillor Shaw's comments. And will City Recorder conduct a roll call vote?
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Singh,
Yes.
Councillor Wolf,
Yes.
Council President Hu.
Yes. So the motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council members present. So the meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Please stay safe.
Night.